Welcome, family. My name is Tanesha Williams, and I'm the Director of Organizing here at FAMM. And we've been working for nearly 30 years to create a more fair and effective justice system. We have advocated policy reform, we've shifted hearts and minds of lawmakers and everyone in between. But none of that will be possible without our family advocates, you. So, talking about you, we hosted our very first conference exactly a month ago in Tampa, Florida. And it was so powerful to see so many families, so many advocates together in one space, coming together to create a better world was inspiring. And so we listened to families as they told stories of how they advocate for their loved ones. And we heard from many of you, those who attended and those who did not. So we wanted to keep up the momentum of that conference in terms of the love that we saw in the space and in terms of the advocacy that we saw. And so that's why we're here today, to showcase families who are taking action, advocating and inspiring others through the work that they do, not only for their loved ones, but for every single person who is impacted by the justice system. Today, we're going to hear directly from a family advocate who has been working to create a fairer system for her brother and for others. Then we're going to hear from an advocate who has dedicated his life's work to ensuring oversight in prisons in Pennsylvania. But before we jump in, there's a few things we want to discuss, 3 things. The first one is that this is an open space. It's a brave space. We're here to learn and grow together, and we want to make sure that this stays a community. So there is a chat box feature. Make sure that you're using that chat box, but remember again that this is a community and we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome in the space. The second thing is that we have our amazing staff who is on hand to answer all of your questions. And so as you're in the chat box, make sure you ask questions. They'll be there to help. And I'll also have a question and answer period for you here to be able to actually answer your questions. And the third thing is social media. Use our hashtag. Families for Reform is the hashtag. So it's FAMMILIES, the number 4 reform. Use the hashtag in the chat box and make sure that you're inviting other people to come onto the space. We want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to learn from those who are doing this work and to answer any questions folks may have. So I'm not going to talk long because I want to make sure Tangi gets to the opportunity to talk about the advocacy work that she has been doing for her brother. And so I will give you a brief bio and then we're going to answer some questions about Tangi. So on March 14, 2018, Tangi Tucker's brother, Travis, was arrested for selling drugs in Halifax County in rural Virginia. He was sentenced to 7 years as a first-time offender. Had he not taken a plea, he would be looking at a sentence of 40 years to life. Outraged at his experience in the system, as she should be, Tangi went into advocacy in high gear to support Travis and to fight for reform, working closely with her cousin, Gary Tucker. Tangi now lives in New York, where she works as a nonprofit professional in finance and accounting. Everybody in the chat box, say, hey, Tangi, Tangi, in the chat box, and we're going to bring her on now. Tangi, welcome.
Hi, Tanesha. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here to share a little bit about your story.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Perfect. So we'll just jump right in. The first question that we have for you is, what brought you into the world of advocacy? Why do you advocate?
Well, I advocate because, after the experience that my family and I had, we realized that there are people out there who are afraid to use their voice. They're being treated unfairly. And I felt that this would be an opportunity to give them that voice. So everyone should be heard and everyone should be treated fairly. So this is my opportunity, my family's opportunity to make that happen for our community in Halifax County.
And tell us a little bit about how you and your family got into this world of advocacy, about your brother, Travis.
Yes. It was, like you stated before, March 14, 2018, my brother was arrested for drugs. I was not aware of it because I was in New York until 2 days later. And it was a feeling like none other. Number one, I wasn't there. And so I felt that, oh my God, what is going on? So I immediately, upon finding out, took the first flight out the next morning, and, went to court, went to his hearing, and it was grueling, a grueling process, just sitting there waiting, and then seeing Travis for the first time after that, after his arrest. There were challenges with us seeing him before the court date. So seeing him, it was very emotional, just in that state.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that feels like. And so you see your brother, he's been charged, and he takes a plea deal of 7 years. Why, or what did you do after that to start advocating?
Well, what happened is, my cousin and I, Gary, we would go to the hearings. Now, he was arrested March 14, 2018, but he did not get sentenced. It was an entire year that dragged out, continuances after continuances after continuances, 2 plea deals, and for fear of, serving that 40 to life, he felt that I'm just going to get it over with. And that bothered me, but it was his choice. And I understood that, having that much time hanging over your head. So it was a full year before he actually got sentenced. And sitting through those hearings, we not only sat through Travis's hearings, we just decided to sit through all of the hearings. Everyone. Sometimes it was all day because Travis may have been first. And just seeing those young people coming and taking pleas, public defender after public defender, it was sad. And I felt like, something needed to be done. I felt as if, they didn't have the resources that Travis had. And, even though Travis's situation turned out the way it did, he still had access to resources. His family had access to resources. And a lot of those families didn't. And so we felt the need to start doing town halls, to bring those families together, to give them a platform, to use their voice. And during that first town hall, it was amazing how many people came out. And just seeing that people were upset. You're talking about family, and you're supposed to love your family, support your family. So when one hurts, all hurt. And just seeing that, it moved us. And so we've just been continuing with these town halls to bring people out, to educate them, to inform them of resources that are available, introducing them to organizations that they may not have known about. And so it's just a wonderful thing.
So from what I hear, the fact that your brother got caught in the system, you decided to go beyond that and listen to other people and hear their stories and see their trials and their cases. And from that, you realized that this was a bigger picture. And so your family started putting on these town halls. And the first one was about resources. And so that's the theme that I'm hearing. So in addition to organizations that you bring in and different ways that you educate, you went to the conference, right?
Yes, I did. And that was one of the things that came out of the town halls, because, I invited Tanesha. And so she reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a part of the conference. And I was super excited. And I actually brought my cousin along. And so the conference, getting invited to that, came out of hosting the town hall. So that was a good thing. And that conference was amazing in so many ways, eye-opening. And like you mentioned in your intro, powerful, very powerful.
So what were some things, and for those of you all who didn't attend the conference, we put on a conference, 200 families together in one space, and we had workshops around organizing advocacy and how to tell your story. So can you talk a little bit about what you took away from the conference as you were continuing to advocate for not only Travis, but other people in your community?
So the conference, you know, we were put into groups, which when I got my packet, I was like, I'm in the freedom group. Wow. So just that alone it made me feel like I am fighting for freedom for others. My cousin, we were in a different group. He was in Power group. And so just the names of the groups were empowering themselves. And so breaking out into the different areas, we were in organizing, advocacy, storytelling, and then self-advocacy was at the end. I would say my favorite, all of them were so informational, but my favorite was the storytelling. And I say the storytelling, it allowed us to learn how to frame and shape our story. And the one thing I took away from that is we all have a story. Don't be ashamed of that story. And it could be a powerful tool, sharing your story and bringing others in.
Yeah, I love it. So we do have a video of the conference for folks who weren't able to attend. Want to make sure that you're able to see that. So in a few minutes, check the chat box and we'll have a link to the YouTube video of the conference so that you can hear more and see what Tangi's talking about. So storytelling was amazing. And so you're hosting these town halls. Can you kind of tell us the steps that you took? So our advocates, our families, they want to be able to do similar things in their communities. And that's what this space is about, right? Like, how do we take the tools that we have, share them with others so that it can be duplicated across the country and other people have an opportunity? So what were a couple of the things that you did? One, to make people aware of the town hall, and then two, to get people to actually show up to the town halls?
So, you know, the process, and it takes a lot of work. I would say that initially it wasn't as much work, getting it started as it is keeping it going. So initially what we did, it's a small town, so everyone knows everyone. And luckily I have family who are involved, in the community. So I reached out to our family members, and I was put in touch with the president of the local chapter of the NAACP. So I reached out to him. We spoke about, what I was trying to do. He was very willing to partner with us. I felt that would be a way, being that, we weren't an organized group. Yeah. So if I could collaborate with a group that was an organization that was already established, that would help with getting a venue and just setting things in motion. So the NAACP, we hosted it together, and we sent out flyers. The NAACP also gave me information as far as contacts, and I created a distribution list. 50 people came out.
Wow. Yes.
And the location that we had. Can
you tell us the location right quick? Where did you host the town hall?
We hosted it at an education center. Southern Virginia Higher Education Center in South Boston, and we got one of their classrooms, and it was large enough where it could open up if we needed more space. It was partitioned, but the space that we had was perfect.
I keep interrupting you because we're getting questions and I want to kind of tease some of this out for folks. With that space, did you get it for free? Did you go and speak to someone, and how did that process work?
Well, initially, the initial was free. We were with the NAACP. So I think that their policy, the organization's policy was that first, if it's a nonprofit, it was free space. Now we're having to pay, which isn't bad. It's just finding a location that is suitable as far as having the equipment that we need, projectors and Wi-Fi and things, because, you know, it's a rural area and not every place has internet access.
Yeah, something you got to think about.
So yeah, so it was a lot of teamwork and a lot of effort on a lot of people's part.
Yeah. So just to replay kind of some of the highlights that I heard, right? In hosting this town hall, the big chunk of work was to get people there. And so you first reached out to families that you knew who would probably show up, and then you found some type of partner. So whether that's a local organization, whether that's a bigger organization within your cities or counties, and then the venue and the space. And so a lot of places, I will say, in addition to the education center, libraries and smaller community centers will allow for these types of town halls to happen there without having to pay. And then creating a flyer and a distribution list to make sure that you are advertising what's happening in the town hall and that you have a running list of people. Did you have a sign-in sheet?
We had a sign-in sheet, and that's how I was able to know we had people to come out. We had a sign-in sheet. I sent the flyer to any and everybody, and I also had those on the distribution list to go and place them in barbershops, salons. So my family was working in Halifax, going out distributing these flyers. I had friends sending them out. I also had local officials come. I sent a separate invitation to them, letting them know what we were trying to achieve and bringing everyone to the table to first try to find out where the problem lies, what families are going through, and what, you know, how they need to be heard. So we invited the Commonwealth Attorney, we invited the sheriff, the local police department. I reached out to the governor's office, the attorney general's office, anybody and everybody. I just sent it. There is no harm in getting it out there.
Yeah, send it out to everyone, legislators, people who you know have some kind of power. That's one of the biggest pieces of organizing and advocacy, is ensuring those who are creating the power and the laws are in the space so that they know what's going on. So we are getting a couple of questions, Tangi, around the cost of putting together this town hall. So the first thing I heard you say was that the venue was free because you were kind of established as a nonprofit, but again, a lot of community centers and libraries will let you use the space if it is for a public interest purpose. What other overall costs did you incur, whether that was printing services or anything else? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
I'm sure. There were some printing costs. I would say the biggest cost was time. And I say that because, you know, we all work. And so I was having to carve out time at my job to create name tags. I had my cousin printing for me at home. I was printing from my job, I had to go to, going to the print shop once I got to Halifax the day of. So I would say, printing was about $50, printing out handouts. The organizations that actually came, the Virginia State Bar, you, Tanesha, you sent information for us, and the ACLU, they brought their own handouts, so that kind of eliminated for me having to do some printing. But overall, the space, like I said, was free. So that first one cost about, I would say, $150 at the most.
I love what you said though about time being the big, like
Time.
that is huge, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of our families who are, you know, impacted by the justice system have to take on additional responsibilities in order to either make ends meet or ensure that their loved one who's incarcerated has food and supplies and the basic necessities, because a lot of times they don't get the basic necessities. And so the understanding that time is like a huge component of this, and making sure you bring those family members in and friends into the space to help with some of that. That's so great. We have another question from Peggy. She said, did any law enforcement officers or law enforcement people attend?
So our first town hall was primarily for family, because we wanted them to feel like they had a safe space to talk about their concerns. That was the first town hall. However, law enforcement did show up, which was fine, because I think once we got there, the families who came, they were at the point where they were going to speak regardless. Regardless of who was there. They were in a space of, I'm fed up. So the second town hall, we actually, we invited the police department, you know, sheriff's office. We did get participation from the public defender's office. We did not get participation from our sheriff's office. But the police office, you know, the police department, South Boston Police Department, they attended. So it was a great turnout as well.
All right, can you tell us about, I'm saying this like I don't know, but our viewers don't know, the next town hall you have coming up. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing for that one.
Our next town hall, after going to the conference, my cousin and I felt like, just sitting through those discussions, that we were on the right track. Like, we've been doing this and didn't really know that we were on the right track. So that was just confirmation. Thank you. So our next town hall is August 31st, and it will be held at a hotel meeting space, Fairfield Inn Suites, and it's from 12 to 4. And the subject matter is creating a platform for change, acknowledgement, acceptance. I had written all of this down.
It's all good. So creating a platform for change, and you're doing something special at this town hall based off of the conference. What are you showing at the town hall?
Also, at the town hall, what we're going to do at the conference, we had Director Rudy Valdez, you know, highlight pieces from his documentary that he did for his sister who was involved with the criminal justice system. So we're going to be showing that. It's called The Sentence. So we're going to have a little viewing of that. And it just shows the importance of family advocates. You know, you have to be there for your loved one during the time, regardless of what they did and how you feel, but they need your support. And so this film shows just that, like how far he went to provide that support for his sister, her kids, and it was just a very touching moment. So we will be showing that as well.
Yes. Non-stop. Get it, Tangi? So town halls, that's what you've done, right? Advocacy looks like town halls, bringing people together in a space, talking about the issues that matter, giving people the platform, creating that platform and the resources that they need to actually continue to advocate for themselves and for their loved ones. We are going to open up to question and answer, so in case people have questions for you. But before we do that, this whole process is about keeping up the momentum. And a big part of keeping up the momentum, as we talked about at the conference on that last Sunday, is taking care of yourself. And so in the process of keeping up the momentum, can you tell us just one thing, like one singular thing that you do in this fight for justice to take care of yourself?
Well, one thing that it was very hard for me to do, because I felt like if I said no, it meant that I wasn't doing enough. So I have learned, I talk to my brother often. Just spoke with him yesterday, and he always seems to have a list of things that he would like for me to do. So I had to start saying no. It was all about how I said it, how I say it. So just saying no is one of the takeaways that I, had to learn to do during this process.
Yeah, I can imagine that can be hard, and also at the end of the day, helpful for you, right? So that you can have a little bit of time to do those other things. And I think the way you said it in terms of it's how you say no. I've sat down and talked to so many families who may find it a little bit difficult. So I did want to make sure that we ask the question, because self-care is so important.
Yes.
And then the last thing I'll ask you, I said that was it, but I'm gonna ask you one more thing. What is the best advice that you have been given about keeping up the momentum or continuing the fight?
I would say the best advice is about keeping up the momentum. I would say don't quit. It's going to get super hard. You're going to feel like you're just used up. But I will say I have had the support of my cousin, Gary. There have been so many times when I said, I can't do this. And he always reminds me of why we're doing this. Like, because number one, it needs to be done. Mm-hmm. It's not just for Travis anymore. It's for others. And it's our duty. So regardless of how hard it gets, how tired you may feel, step back, but don't quit.
Yeah, so self-care, say no to how do you keep up the momentum? Don't quit. We do have one question for you. And you kind of just hit on that, right? Like it's for others, and this fight is about everyone who is caught up in the system. But the question is, how do you talk to people, whether that is family or coworkers or the neighbor next door, about having a loved one that's in prison?
How do I talk about it?
The storytelling workshop was a part of that book.
It's very emotional for me because this is our first time, my family's first time experiencing this. And it being so close because it was my brother. Yeah. And for me, I'm a very private person. So it's very hard. It's very, very hard for me because, there are not too many people that I trust. Yes. But I have to remember that it's not about me, it's the right thing to do. It's just, I feel good when I get feedback from the families. I've gotten feedback from the families, I've gotten emails saying, when are we having the next town hall? Like, thank you so much for doing this. Yeah. We needed this. So that makes me feel good, and it makes it a little easier. Because I know that it's not just my story, it's our story. Yes. So knowing that it's not just me, and I'm not going through it alone, it makes it a little easier to talk about, the situation and my problem. In the beginning, I only went to one friend. And that one friend, like I said, I trusted her with the information. But she also was able to give me a lot of guidance. Good. So, it's going to be hard. You're going to feel a certain way about sharing. But it gets easier. It gets easier. And it got easier for me because Travis was also helping himself. He was the one who led me to FAMM. So how he knew about FAMM, I don't know how it got to him, but he put it out to me, And so I looked FAMM up and I was like, oh, yeah.
That's so amazing. We got one more last quick question, and then I'm going to give you a break from talking. The last question is from Sherry Davis, and it says, do you ever fear the possible consequences of advocating, especially given that you've had law enforcement and different people show up at your town halls?
Do I ever fear the what?
The possible consequences of advocating for Travis.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That goes through my mind, you know, when we first decided to do the town hall, because it's a rural area, it's a very small town, everyone knows everyone, and, you know, people are fearful to speak out. I still have family who live there. So that kind of went through my mind, like, you know, and I know the things that go on. We all know the things that go on in small towns. So I kind of was fearful of, you know, maybe there'd be some retaliation. People would tell me that they were fearful of speaking to me.
Yeah.
Because of retaliation from law enforcement. But, you know, I am that type of person who I'm going to do it, regardless of what comes, because when there is pushback, that lets me know that we're on the right track. We are moving in a direction that's bothering people. It's stirring things up, and that's okay. That's a good thing. That's how I look at it. So yeah, I am fearful. You know, I think about it, but I
keep going.
I don't let it stop me.
Yes, love it. I love it. Ms. Tangi, thank you so much for joining us, for dropping this knowledge, for helping folks as they are continuing their advocacy journey, taking this time off and joining us today. And most importantly, thank you for keeping up the momentum. We'll see you.
Thank you, FAMM. Thank you, Tanesha, everyone that I met at the conference. Thank you so much for empowering all of us.
All right, till next time. Bye.
Till next time. Bye.
All right, as we are getting ready to shift gears here, a couple of things. Number one, if you are not signed up to receive our emails, if you don't get emails from FAMM, make sure you go to www.famm.org, become an advocate, and sign up to receive our emails so that you know about what's happening, the work that we're doing on the ground, maybe in your state, and just the work that we're doing more broadly. Also, make sure you're using the hashtag Families for Reform. That's FAMMILIES, the number 4, reform, as we are in this chat. You spoke and we listened. Our wonderful director of social media, Lonnie, asked you a question in our Families in Action group about what you wanted to hear and what matters to you most about advocacy. And what you said across the country was prison conditions. And we've heard from you, we've read articles about mold and flooded cells and violence and lack of food in prisons all across the country. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided the space for you to also get some tools and some knowledge around what it looks like to improve prison conditions for your loved ones and for folks that you're advocating for. And so next we have an advocate who has dedicated his life, Joshua Alvarez, to ensuring that we have true transparency in citizen advocacy and true transparency in oversight of our prisons, and especially in Pennsylvania. Joshua is the prison monitoring director for the Pennsylvania Prison Society. He researches, develops, and executes how the Prison Society monitors and advocates change across Pennsylvania. So we're going to welcome Joshua into the space right now. So as he comes in, make sure you say, "Hey, Joshua," in the chat box so he feels the fam welcome. Joshua, can you hear us? Maybe you might be on mute. As we're checking that out, again, if you're not signed up to receive our emails, please make sure you go to www.famm.org. Also, if you have not checked out that video of the conference, make sure you check out the video of the conference. It's amazing. And I think Josh is with us now. Josh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yay, you're here. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the line.
Good. Can you first start off by telling us a little bit about what drove you to doing prison advocacy type work? And then we're going to jump into a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think me, along with a lot of people in this day and age, have noticed and have borne witness to the fact that criminal justice issues are it's a defining issue of this generation. I know that the criminal justice system touches I know it touches me personally. I know it touches a lot of my neighbors and a lot of the people that are in my surrounding. And so it's something that's personal and it's something that needs to be addressed. And so I'm fairly new to the society, but I've been here for about 6 months. And when I was looking for new work, I knew I wanted to work for an organization with a worthwhile mission, and I wanted to make sure that my advocacy and my work had value and had meaning. And so that's how I got involved into the society. And it's been an amazing 6 months with meeting amazing advocates and amazing volunteers. And so, yeah. And so just a little overview of the Pennsylvania Prison Society. We are the oldest human rights organization in the country. We were founded way back in 1787 and recently just celebrated the 232 year of the society. As was mentioned, we advocate for sensible and humane criminal justice policies. And we do that we have 3 programmatic areas. We have some mentoring that we do in some prisons in jails here in Philadelphia, and then we run a transportation program that aims to keep families connected. That's a big thing because we know that family connection is vital. But kind of the big thing and the unique thing that we do as an organization is we are the designated citizen oversight organization for the Department of Corrections in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so what that means is the Prison Society has a network of about anywhere from 450 to 500 volunteers across the state that will go into the different state and the different county prisons to meet with incarcerated people to see if there are things that we can do to help. And so how that process kicks off is we get communication daily from both incarcerated individuals, but also from their loved ones. They call into the office or they'll drop into the office because they're needing something. A lot of times it's maybe they're not getting a proper care, or they have an issue about a CO or a correctional officer, or maybe they feel that a grievance is not being heard. And so we have this network of volunteers that once we receive these types of requests for help, we disseminate them amongst our volunteers, and they will go out there and we see if there's anything we can do on the administrative side to try to advocate and to help the individual navigate the complex correctional system. And so our volunteers are mainly lay individuals. They're just good citizens like you and I. They are people that are concerned with their fellow citizens or their brothers or sisters or somebody else in the community that happens to be inside those walls. Our organization was basically established under the idea that without citizen eyes checking on what's happening on the inside of prisons, they tend to devolve into the lowest common denominator. And so that's what we try to do. We try to bring light to darkness and bring darkness to light. And we're unique, and we recognize our privilege. The society does this work because we have statutory access to anybody that's incarcerated in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It basically was written into law that our volunteers can see these individuals on demand. And we recognize that that makes us unique in the world, or in basically across the country. There are a few other organizations that do prison monitoring, and they do this work a little bit differently. The fact is while we are unique, I believe this is work that can be done based off of relationships. We've recognized that this is a growing field of interest from advocates across the country, that people want to know what's happening on the inside of those walls. And so we field calls constantly from organizations that are interested in how they can maybe embark on something like this work, or how they could possibly maybe replicate something of the sort in their local cities or in their jurisdictions or states. I know that some other states have tried to move some legislation that would provide some citizen oversight or some sort of transparency body, like an ombudsman or something like that. But it's work that's needed. It's work that's valuable, and I am just lucky to work with so many great advocates and volunteers.
Yes, that sounds amazing. The work that the Pennsylvania Prison Society does, and I had no idea that you all were the oldest human rights organization in the world. So we do have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, you mentioned that the process for getting into the prisons, it looks like, a complaint is filed or someone calls the society, and then from there you all have on hand volunteers that will go to the prisons. Is that how people get into the prisons? And through the statutory, go ahead.
Yeah, that's kind of the catalyst. We obviously wish we could be a little bit more proactive, but kind of limitations. Right now, we have to respond to those requests. The goal is, and we are trying to expand our prison monitoring portfolio and how we do this work. But right now, that's what kicks off a visit, because until we hear from either the individual themselves or from their loved one, we don't know what's happening. And so that's the catalyst for a lot of this work, at least right now.
Yeah. The second question is there, you mentioned briefly that there were a couple of other states who were doing this. Do you know the names of those places or the states in which they're located, or any other information about them?
Yeah, so I know when we were at the FAMM conference, there were a few organizations that were present that were interested in doing some work like this. I know Texas had some legislation that unfortunately didn't make it through the process that would have established kind of like an ombudsman, and there was another state present that had a similar legislation, may not have been exactly developing like an ombudsman or something, but it was something of that vein. I can't remember where it's at, but I know that I can look into it. I'm happy to provide a follow-up.
Yeah, we'll get that, and we'll make sure that we drop it in our chat box. This video is going to be available on our FAMM page, and so you'll be able to see the comments in the other places that may have a similar program. For those who don't, Joshua, who don't have a society that's local to them, what kind of advice would you give them about advocacy or trying to establish those relationships that you talked about are so important to creating something like this in their hometown?
Yeah, I would say go to your jails, go to your prisons when there is some sort of programming, or if there's some sort of public meeting, go, make yourselves known, make yourselves present. These are our fellow citizens and our loved ones on the inside, and we want to make sure that they're being treated fairly and humanely. And so make yourselves present, and see, a lot of times you get more bees with honey, and start building those relationships, see what you can start doing to get on the inside, and really it's through that entrance and just bringing those citizens' eyes to some of these issues, like that change will be possible.
Good. All right, so we have a couple more questions. How are you received by the prison officials? We'll start there, and then we have like 2 more questions, and that's from Peggy. Thank you, Peggy, for the question. How are you received by the prison officials?
So like I said, we've been around forever and a day, and so they know us, and they know that we're coming, and they know that we have the law in our favor, and so for the most part, they're good to us, and they recognize that we are a value add, and they recognize like that this is set up to bring those citizen eyes, and so we try not to have an adversarial relationship with the administration, with the prison administration. We recognize if that's the approach that we get, then things get a little bit complex and they can possibly throw up some hurdles. But for the most part, they receive us well. Our volunteers are encouraged to have some standard practices where they'll let them like kind of give them an idea of when they're coming. I know that sounds questionable, but just kind of give them a courtesy. And then we have like standard practice that they introduce themselves to their administration, that we have a single point of contact to each administration. And so we just have some standard practices and procedures that seem to smooth over a lot of issues that could arise.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what you were saying in terms of relationships and, making sure that you're making yourself known and building those relationships. One of the biggest concerns for a lot of our family members, Josh, is the fact that there may sometimes be adverse reactions to people filing internal grievances or complaining about issues that are happening. We've definitely read lots of articles and heard lots of stories of retaliation because prisoners are standing up for their civil rights. Has there been any feedback from prisoners, if there are adverse actions, for reaching out and asking for help?
So that's always a concern. From some people when they first reach out to us, or when they try to bring something to our attention. I think that can be alleviated when they know you're coming back. And I think for our volunteers and the administrations, they know that we're going to be in there the next week, or they know that we're going to be in there the week after that, and so they know that like a problem. If there is if anything does arise, that we're going to know about it, and that this is going to be an ongoing effort. And so a lot of times we will not be silenced, nor will we be diverted. And so for the most part, we haven't, because we just have this long-standing relationship, we've been around forever. Like people know the society and they know our volunteers. Yeah, I would just say it's having that constant touch point and your constant, I don't know, your like hand on the pulse of what's happening on the inside. That should kind of avoid some of those issues.
Yeah, cool. This is the last question that we have, and this is for everyone and not from a specific person, but through the lens of an advocate, how would you say, or how would you tell others to keep up the momentum, right? This work as an advocate, working in either a nonprofit space or in other spaces around policy or, shifting things, can sometimes be heavy. So how do you keep up the momentum, or what's the best advice you would give for an advocate on how to keep up the momentum?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's always something that's something that we try to go over with our volunteer base. First and foremost, you have to take care of yourself. First and foremost, remember that you can only put out as much as you put in for yourself. And so take care of yourself, recognize the work is important. A lot of times you have to just recommit to each and every day to the cause, and remember that it's worthwhile. Celebrate your victories, however small. But recognize that there's a need for the fight, and if you're the one that recognizes it, you're probably the one that's gonna help bring about the change.
Joshua, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to our continued work together.
Of course, we love FAMM, we love the families, and we're just happy that we can be partners with you guys. It's great.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, families, advocates, you have just heard today from two different people, a family advocate who told you to don't quit and keep the fight going and also take care of yourself, and an advocate who's been doing this work and ensuring that our prison conditions are being overseen by citizen advocates and folks who are dedicated to this work. And he also said, make sure you take care of yourself. And so that's a big part of this. We want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, but that you also have the tools and the resources that you need to be able to continue to fight, not only for your loved one, but for people across the world who are caught in our justice systems. As we go, a couple of things to remember. One, make sure you sign up for our emails. That's the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing in terms of policy, stay up to date with what we're doing in terms of advocacy on the ground, and everything in between. Number two, share this video. Like you, there are so many people who want to know or want to have the tools and the resources to be able to advocate, and that's exactly what this video is doing. It's making sure that we give you all the tools and the platform to be able to continue to advocate for your loved ones. And there's a host of other things that we have coming up here at FAMM. If you are an affected family member, we do have a Facebook group called Families in Action. That's FAMMILIES in Action. We're going to post an invitation in the chat box. This is a space. It is a community of over 3,000 people from across the country who are dedicated to helping each other out, getting the resources that they need, and just feeling like they're a part of a community and a family that cares about ensuring that we are creating a more fair and effective justice system. We've got some wonderful things coming up in the works also. So make sure if you haven't checked your emails or if you're not signed up, sign up for our emails. We want to make sure that prisons all across the country are visited and that people know what's happening so that we can continue this fight for our loved ones. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Share this video. Like it. Peace.